everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. I didn't get a chance to do a video last week because I just started a new full-time job as a school librarian, so that kind of occupied my time. I'm going to be trying as much as possible to do videos on the weekends, to do paintings on the weekends, so I can have a video out on Tuesdays still. So I was able today is Saturday, so this past weekend, able to get a painting done. It's a 10-minute one, and it's of a blue macaw, so fairly quick painting. You can tell that these quick paintings are not about accuracy or having the exact right proportions. It's about getting something done in a relatively short amount of time to boost your confidence. I talk about that several times while I'm painting during the video, so you will get that idea about what this 10-minute watercolor series is really about. So, before I get into that, I did want to mention my website, CoreyFrankCreates.com. It is the best way to get in touch with me, learn more about what I do. You can sign up for my weekly email newsletter there, and in return get access to my free no-brainer watercolor supplies buying guide. It's just really helpful. If you're not sure which supplies to buy, it's a one-page PDF with links to products I recommend based on a variety of budget points. So there's that. You also have my online art shop that you can look at, my online watercolor courses when you're ready to take a deeper dive into learning watercolor. All that is there on my website, CoreyFrankCreates.com. I'd love for you to check it out. All right, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video. You're welcome to follow along since it's in real time, or feel free to just sit back, relax, and watch. Since this is a 10-minute painting, I don't have an undersketch down first. I just have my 140-pound watercolor paper here, as well as some brushes. I have a size 8 and a size 0 round that I think will work well for this painting. And of course my paints and water. So I am going to set my 10-minute timer, and if you want to know the reference image I'm using, it's linked in the description from unsplash.com. So my 10-minute timer is starting now, and I'm going to be painting a macaw here. So one thing I really like to do when it's a 10-minute painting is start with a somewhat central focal point. So the eye of an animal tends to be a pretty good bet, because then you can kind of place everything else around it based on where that sort of center eye is. And in this reference image, the eye is almost in the center of the head, so it makes a really good reference point. Now, I started with some cadmium yellow light, just very faintly. I'm going to add a little bit of this Payne's gray for some of the shadowing in the eye. I'm laying that really light color in the background first, and then I will go ahead and add the pupil. But I generally with watercolors, want to start with your lighter colors and work to your darker colors. You can flex some of those rules of thumb or suggestions when you're doing a quicker painting, but in kind of this central eye area, I am going to go ahead and do that. So there's a little bit of some of this darker ring of color that circles around the eye, so I'm just kind of doing that a little bit. All right. And so while I let that dry, I'm going to go ahead and start painting the ring around the eye. I have a really nice dark skin of the eye just right around here. Has a little bit of a dotted texture in that photo, so that's what I'm going for. Remember that these 10-minute paintings really aren't about perfection. They're about getting a recognizable subject in a relatively short amount of time. Okay, the paint in the eye has dried, so I'm going to go ahead and add my pupil here. And it's really, really dark, very opaque for the most part. There is just a little bit of a highlight on the upper left of the pupil, so I'm going to go ahead and I rinsed my brush and just kind of spreading that color from here. There's also a little bit of a faint kind of blue, so I'm going to go into my manganese blue. Add that here. There we go. So there we go. In a relatively short amount of time, we already have what looks like an eye. Now I want to move on to the kind of next big portion of the face. So I'm not going to focus on kind of all the feathers around the face yet. I am going to go ahead and do the beak, which is, I'm going to say right about here. Now, the thing about the beak is there tends to be a lot of kind of lines and textures in there. Again, for these shorter paintings, you might not necessarily have the time to add all of that. So just kind of use values of light and dark where it makes sense. And then you can maybe add some detail later if you have time at the end, or if you wind up extending this into a longer painting. So like this beak has a bunch of kind of like light lines happening, especially right here. So I may try to block some of that in. Typically, you want to keep the white of your paper for your highlights, but with a quicker painting, that's not always realistic or plausible. So you can kind of go out and lift paint later, again, if you have time. So that's the bottom part of the beak. And then for this opening in the beak with really, really dark, thick, opaque paint, so you don't want a lot of water in your brush when you're doing this. When you have your thickest, darkest colors, you want to have a higher ratio of paint in there rather than water. You can see his cute little tongue in there. We'll try and get that in. It's like a lighter spot right here. So I'm going to get a little bit of the paint out of my brush by blotting it on my towel, and then kind of go in and just spread some of that paint around. There we go. And now, do the top portion of the beak. I'm not quite at my halfway point, about 5.5 minutes left, but my time, I'm trying to keep an eye on it because it does go fairly quickly. So let's see if we can get this top portion of the beak blocked in pretty well. That's going to really start helping with making this little guy recognizable. I may have extended his beak a little too far compared to the proportion of this, so let me see if I can fix that. I'm gonna lift some of my paint here, and I need to have some spare towels. So I'm opening my drawer under the desk. So I went in with clean, damp water and did this. Spread it on the paint, and then I'm just gonna dab it up. And that really helps, especially when the paint is still wet. You can also do it when it's dry. It's just easier when it's wet and when it's a lighter color. Okay, back in here. And there we go. That did a better job. I can just spread this paint. I have to clean up this edge a little bit. I noticed that I got a few droplets here. Wipe those up. Just do your best. Again, when you're working quickly and you don't have an undersketch for your proportion, it can be sometimes a challenge. You can sometimes get things a little off track. I want this to be lighter. This beak, the upper portion of the beak needs to be lighter because it's that beak opening where his mouth is open that's actually the darkest. Okay, and I'm okay with there not being smooth color again because there's a lot of variation in the beak, kind of some irregularities, scratches. So I'll do a little bit of dotting for texture. Okay, now I really don't have a ton of time. I have about 3.5 minutes left, so I really want to work on getting some really beautiful feathery color in here. So I'm just going to go in with my sap green. Really thick. I'll start lightening it up in the lighter parts. This round brush, here's some cadmium yellow, works really well, honestly, for kind of this feathery texture because you can kind of press and then lift away from you, and it just naturally creates a feathered texture. Maybe add some cadmium yellow light in here just to add some variation. Again, I'm not focusing too much on accuracy. I just really want to get sort of the general feel and appearance. And I realized that actually these feathers need to come down much further, closer to that beak. protect our feathers. I want to really start bringing in some blue, so I'm going to go into my manganese blue. Kind of draw it in to where those yellows and greens are, so that we have a little bit of kind of a color transition, and then rinse my brush and go back with those kind of deeper blues. And then ultimately adding some ultramarine blue in over the top as well for some of the darker colors, for the shadowing. Alright, I don't have too much time left. I have about 1 minute and 40 seconds, so this is probably going to go over 10 minutes, which that's totally fine. You can paint as long as you're comfortable. So if you want to go longer, perfect. If not, then you just get to a stopping point that's comfortable for you. Again, the whole point of these quick paintings is to build that confidence and to get practice in on a regular basis. That's the whole kind of idea. Get feathers coming down this way. He's got some really ruffled feathers, which is fun for creating this kind of texture. I really do at this point just have 1 minute left. So I'm gonna go into some regular cadmium yellow, get these kind of main feathers here. All about the energy and feel of things. So you can kind of guess at that feather texture with some of the variations of light and dark, and these a little bit of kind of the brushy textures that look like feathers. And then my Payne's Gray. About 26 seconds left. Let's see how much of this portion that I can get done. Lights and darks, trying to maintain some, so I'm gonna have little kind of portions that aren't as dark under here. There we go. Okay, this right here is exactly 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, you can definitely recognize what this is. It is a parrot, a blue macaw, and you know, I could very much leave it there, but I personally want to keep going and add some more detail. So if you want to keep going with me, you're welcome to do that if you've been painting along. And I know, again, there's a lot of kind of really fast movement in this. So some of it you may, if you are following along, may need to pause the video, whatever works best for you. So I do want to get some of these facial feathers. I think those add a lot of character, just kind of finish things off a bit. So I'm going to work for several more minutes just to get it looking a little more finished, adding a little more detail in here. Again, this is Payne's Gray. A lot of the time I will use Payne's Gray in place of black because I think it has a richer color, and it's nice to just kind of vary that up a little bit. Okay, we have some kind of feathery dots right around the face, so I'm just going to stay right on the tip of this size 8 brush. Just kind of paint them in here, right around here. He has quite a few kind of on his face. You don't have to have it the exact perfect placement, just kind of follow the general pattern of what you're seeing in your reference image, or if you're painting an object that you've set up, like a still life, you can look at what you have physically set up in front of you. I'm gonna add a little more of my cadmium yellow here. Just get a little more texture. That variation in light and dark is really helpful. So layering is really important with watercolor, where you do your initial layers and then let them dry, and then you can go back over with the thicker, darker paint in subsequent layers and just keep working up your value until it has really good variation between light and dark. That's kind of the whole idea of achieving, especially more realistic pieces. So for that blue, I liked having the variation between the manganese blue, which is kind of more of that greenish blue. It's a warm blue, and then we have our cool blue, which is the ultramarine. has a little more of a purpley kind of tone to it. Okay, we need to add a nostril here, so I'm gonna go back to my Payne's Gray. Get this here. Oops. There we go. Add a tiny bit of detail. Let's see if I can get just very light kind of texture in this folded, wrinkly white skin. So I'm just kind of dabbing here and there to get that effect. And all right, so I did work for about 4 more minutes, I would say. Now, if you look at the original reference image of this compared to kind of what I have on here, it's not 100% proportional. Like, I think I may not have extended the head out far enough. Could fix that up just a little bit now. A little bit more feathering here. But it is pretty recognizable, I would say. And we can kind of have fun with adding a little bit of kind of whimsical dotting and stuff. So I just get lots of water, lots of pigment in the brush. You can even flick it to make finer flecks of color rather than big droplets. I really enjoy doing this. I know it doesn't suit everyone's taste. It can be a little controversial. Some people really love it. Some people, it's really not their cup of tea, and that's okay. I enjoy doing it. I think it adds a lot of whimsy and fun. So that's why I want to go into, let's see if I can mix up a green here. So cadmium yellow and the manganese blue look really nice together. So we'll do that for some color specks. Ideally, you want as thick a paint as possible. Alright, I've played enough. That's now approaching 6 more minutes. So I know this isn't technically a truly 10-minute painting anymore, but the spirit is still there with short amount of time. So I'm just going to add a signature. I like using a detail brush. This is really tiny, so I can get really fine lines, staying right on that tip. You want enough paint in your brush that you can smoothly move it around, but not so much that it is too thick and creates too thick of a line. These detail brushes are really nice for adding a signature, obviously for painting details. Like if I wanted to really get detailed with adding some of the lines and imperfections in the beak and line textures in the feathers, I could do that. No, actually I added that signature. Here's what I want to do, just to kind of make it feel a little more finished. I want to taper off some of this color. Just a little bit. Kind of lighten it up. Get it a little looser so it doesn't have as abrupt of an edge. I want it to kind of fade just a little bit. There we go. And there you have it. Final piece. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video and found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. Until my next one, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. God bless, and I will see you soon.